Hello, welcome back to I Got Board Game.
Yeah.
I Got Board Game. I am Ben,
Gone.
and today we are here with a Kickstarter preview for you. A little late to the party. We got delayed on doing this Kickstarter preview, but they will be doing a late backer pledge and their pledge manager after the campaign. So that's still a way for you guys to jump on board if you are interested after hearing our basically preview thoughts on this game. And obviously, since it's on Kickstarter, we haven't played it. It's being developed still, but these are kind of our thoughts, initial thoughts, based on just kind of looking through their Kickstarter, maybe watching a couple of videos on other reviewers who were able to preview it or get a prototype copy. And so the game we will be previewing today is
Harry Potter's DIY potion.
that sounds like it would be a real game.
It's a real game, but it actually is
Distilled.
no longer actually live on Kickstarter, but
No longer actually live. Yeah. But the picture I'm going to share is similar to this one. Anyway.
I'll stick my hands here so they can pull.
So Distilled is a game by Paverson Games. It's basically a Euro game where you are competing to distill spirits, or basically alcoholic beverages, distilled liquors.
Not ghosts. Why am I?
That's what I thought you were gonna put as your picture, like Legend of Korra.
I could have done that too. No, I'll save that. I'll save that for the review.
Spirit bending. No, okay, so like I said, that's the theme of Distilled, the board game, for 1 to 5 players, and it says it plays in 30 minutes per player, which sounds pretty good. That's a good amount of time for a game of this weight with these details going on. And again, this theme, I would want to say first is a theme that doesn't really resonate with me because I personally just don't care for drinking alcohol. Obviously, I have friends who do. John has a problem. No, I'm just kidding.
Nope.
No,
not drinking enough. No, just.
But like there have been times in the past, definitely in the board game industry, where the theme seemed, if it's done well enough, it gets me interested in the game at least, and how that theme, the technical details to it in real life, how that got translated into a board game form. Very similar case would be viticulture, right? And you guys can check out our review of that. I'll put that in the link below by a different company, so not related to this, but just like the immediate theme that popped to mind when I saw this game Distilled on Kickstarter. And so and then viticulture was one about going through the process of running a vineyard and gathering grapes and turning it into wine and selling it. And so you'll see some similar steps, obviously, because the real life process is like that. The business is like that in real life, but it does kind of put it into, I would say, a different format as a board game, right? Not a worker placement game, but more of a tableau building, resource management game where, it's not worker placement. You're just going to be buying the ingredients directly from a market and, getting what you need to mix the specific spirits or alcoholic drink, liquor that you're trying to make, and then storing it, maybe aging it and selling it. And so to go over to their Kickstarter page, we'll kind of discuss our thoughts on different parts of the game as we go through it, and I'll kind of scroll through their Kickstarter page so you can see some of the details too while we're doing so. And so, like I mentioned, and I hope I said it correctly, it's for 1 to 5 players. I don't know if I said 1 to 4, but 1 to 5 players. And this project did really well. It ended a few days ago. I think a few days ago, and it did really well. It reached $500,000, which is very impressive since it's Paverson Games' first game, right? And so to get into the game, obviously, like, we're not going to go over all the rules since that's actually being developed still and cleaned up. But the general idea is, as you can see, in this theme, this setting, each player is going to have their own player board to keep track of the ingredients they're getting. And the ingredients are going to be bought from a market of cards where there's going to be a row of, I think it's, you need sugars, you need yeast, and you need like water.
Yeah, so water and yeast are always necessary for all of your alcohols that you're going to be creating. And then there's different forms of types of sugars or other potential components that you can be adding into the different types of recipes of these spirits that you will be making over the course of the game.
Yeah, you can see some of the cards here. Like there's these premium ingredients, which are like higher quality versions of those different 3 ingredients we mentioned. And so in the picture, you can even see like apples being I think it's like a fruit sugar.
Yeah.
If you're going to use that style. And then there's also like, yeah, the
grains or barley.
Yeah, the grains
like
and the water. And then you also have like distillery upgrades that you can buy, which can be either employees to work for you, which can basically provide an extra benefit when you're making your liquor, or it could be some kind of device or technology that also helps with that. And then you're also going to need to buy like barrels and bottles. Basically, the barrel is what you're going to be, it'll be a card that you pair with the ingredients you're using in your liquor to indicate that you're storing that liquor in that kind of barrel. And then certain liquors will have symbols on it indicating whether it needs to be aged or if it doesn't age and you just need to sell it immediately and it's fine. And then you'll also need the bottle when you're selling it. And there's different kinds of bottles that when you pair it with a liquor, it could basically, kind of be the skin to your product.
Mm-hmm.
And so provide you with extra points that way. And I think in this game it's called spirit points, basically the victory points in this game. But then also maybe get you, or maybe get you like a little more money when you're selling it with this specific bottle with this kind of design or style to it. And so, yeah, those are kind of all the main cards in the game. And so, like I mentioned, each player will have their player board to keep track of these items, which are all cards, which I think is something that makes the game a little cleaner looking when you're kind of setting things up and even playing with things, not a whole bunch of different kinds of components for all the different thematic ingredients that you're using. So I think that's a nice touch. And then you'll also have like the board to check all the points that you're getting. The spirit points is just like a point tracker. But then one of the things I found really interesting was I think it's not the player reference. There's like the clipboard, right?
Yeah, that's
here.
It's right there. Yeah.
Yeah, and these are, each player will get one of these, which are like recipe lists. And so it'll, next to each type of liquor, it lists the kind of ingredients it needs, whether it needs to be aged. And so it's kind of a way, I think you can, it's basically like your menu that you're trying to build up or like create the things on it, the liquors in the list.
Exactly. And I think the cool thing here is that not everyone will be making the same recipes over the course of the game, that you have to effectively unlock those recipes. And once you unlock it, you have it, but there's even different grades of the recipes, which if you know your spirits and stuff, there are different labels to your liquors, right? Of high label, like high end to low end types. So this game also in this recipe list kind of captures that sense of like different tiers of the types of liquors that can be made, which is pretty cool.
And then like one of the stretch goals I was quickly looking through was making this recipe list, this clipboard dual layered for each player. So that's just a like nice touch. It's always a nice touch when those kind of components trackers are double layered, meaning there's going to be some kind of indent or little insert where then your, the cubes that you'll be using in this game to track it, it'll just fit in there and not be something that'll like slide around or get knocked off on accident. You don't know what you were tracking. I also forgot to mention, you'll also have identity cards, which are kind of like your variable player powers. But I always like seeing that in games, and it's still a little surprising to see it in a Euro game, that like even in a game that's not about like some kind of combat or something, there's still a way that they put in this flavor of, depending on your character's background, they each have their own special recipe that only they can make, or they also have maybe a bonus to certain actions when they take those. So that's also a nice addition, small detail. And so yeah, you can keep going down. You can see the different kinds of components in this. And then one of the things that stuck out to me the most, one of the thematic details that they put in the mechanics was when you're deciding, in each round you're going to be going back and forth, each player taking a turn, choosing to basically buy. A lot of it is the buying, it looked like from the video that we watched, which was the video by Before You Play. So if you guys actually want to see that, I would suggest checking their channel out. Before You Play, Monique and Naveen, they play actually one full round with the prototype. And so you can see kind of the actions you'll be taking on a whole round of the game. And so, yeah, it seemed like a lot of it was buying the ingredients, taking turns to do that. And then you're choosing which ingredients you're putting into your liquor that you're distilling. And then one of the mechanics that I thought was cool and thematic sounding, from not knowing anything about spirits, is you'll bundle all your ingredients. So you can have you're going to put 3 water cards and 2 different kinds of sugars you got, and maybe then 1 yeast or something. And you'll shuffle your bundle, which is kind of like you going through this process of creating it. And then you're going to remove the top and bottom card from that little stack, which I think is supposed to thematically represent in the process of making spirits, where they kind of take off the bottom and the top layers of what they create and use that in a future batch. And so in this game, that got translated into removing the top and bottom card of those ingredients that you're putting together. And you'll keep those ingredients, so you get to use them next time. But it's actually a push your luck kind of a mechanic, where you have to remove the top and bottom card, and you're hoping what's left in your stack is the ingredients that are needed to successfully create your spirit. And so there's that way that it can mess up, or you might want to be more cautious of spending more money to make sure you have extra water, so that's what gets removed and not something else that's crucial. And so that was a really cool little detail that's different from a lot of games.
That's right.
And then going on, so what we looked at was the components for the main game, which is during the Kickstarter and seemingly during the late pledge manager, at least what's revealed so far. They might change it later on, but the base game pledge was just $55. And then the signature blend level is $85, which is the base game plus this first expansion, which adds basically African and Middle East distiller identities and ingredients and recipes to the game. But then this pledge also includes some of the other things that got unlocked later on as stretch goals, like a distilled shot glass, so their own custom shot glass, custom metal coins for the game, and their own custom coasters. And so at least on looking at this pledge, this is the one that I was kind of thinking I would go for if this game appealed to me, because I think these are nice things, and the value actually seems really good, considering that it's like $30 more on top of the game, but you get the expansion, so it's basically everything gameplay wise that's out for the game. You get their custom shot glass, which who knows when I'll use, but that's kind of cool. Metal coins, which I do almost always get for a game, custom metal coins, and their custom coasters, which actually I would use just as regular coasters, where then a regular expansion for a board game would pretty easily be like $20, and so 55 plus 20 was already $75, and then $10 difference for a shot glass, metal coins, and coasters. That's value wise, that's actually very good. From my experience. So that it would be the pledge level I would think about. But obviously I do slightly lean toward just the base game, because I'm not sure if I'm fully bought into this theme. The mechanics I think would be good, but more of the theme for me. But even if the theme's done well, I'm interested. But yeah, there's still that sense of maybe I just want the base game to be that chance to try it with my friends and see if this is something I would want to play more often. I didn't know if you had other things to say about these pledge levels, John, or any of the other mechanics.
Yeah, no, I mean, like watching through the play, it does seem like it's a very interesting blend. I actually really like the concept of the ingredients being put together, because one of the things that Ben, like we didn't get super into because we're not doing a full review of this game, but as you're creating the wines, one of the things you did mention was the aging process. So
Mm,
not only was there skimming of the top and the bottom ingredients, right, and of kind of like the taking the alcohol out of actual alcoholic beverages when you're creating the spirits, and then using it for later batches, but even when once you have that final set of ingredients, if you're making a certain kind of liquor or spirit that needs to be aged over time, you've got to put it into caskets or into the kegs, whether it's the wooden ones, metal, whatever. And then those actually age over time. And there's a separate deck that's not part of the ingredient set that's called the flavor deck. And the flavor decks actually, you kind of not necessarily push your luck, but you kind of decide when is the right time to flip to sell that, because the more flavors that you have in your aged spirits, the better it is typically for that drink, for that type of spirit, which will net you a lot more points or get you more money and will do stuff for you later on. So it's kind of this also sense of kind of deciding when is the right time, how long should I age a certain drink, because there's also like you have to sell it at some point, because if you don't sell it before the end of the game, then you're not going to get any benefits off of, or you'll get a little bit of benefit, but not the full kind of benefit of the flavor profile of your drink. But
mm.
yeah, so
No,
I
yeah,
think that's also a really cool concept too, where it's not just selling the spirits as soon as you create them, as mentioned for the non-aged, but even the aged ones, you have to decide when you're going to sell it and how you're going to sell it.
no, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I did forget about that. But yeah, the flavor deck was a cool touch. Also, with the idea, like in comparison to other games
Mhm.
with this kind of theme, or even just Euro games in general, where there's often that sense of you're getting everything you need to just make something very determined, you know,
Mhm.
where I think that first step of the distilling process where, you know, there's that push your luck, that kind of disrupts it a little bit, makes it more interesting than just a straightforward, I got enough so I can make this exact thing.
Exactly.
But then getting to the flavor part too, yeah, that the idea that you're basically making it more sophisticated by waiting longer and getting more flavors added to your liquor. And so yeah, there's that decision part too, which then
Mhm.
makes it a more interesting decision than
Exactly. And
something.
and that's the really cool part about this. It's kind of that both the creation of it and then the post creation kind of decision making, where it's not, as you were saying, it's not such a simple straightforward thing in a lot of the Euro games, which is very much a you get the ingredients or you get the resources you need and bam, I'm done, and then you just move on. In this game, it's one, you have to kind of like hedge your bets with how much you're putting, because just putting the exact amount likely means you're not going to be able to make it. But at the same time, if the more you add into it, right, it may kind of dip into your reserves of your ingredients, and you have to age it over time potentially. So you kind of have to really think about what is the most effective use of your resources and your ingredients, and also the timing of when you're selling everything, which, you know, because there's only a certain amount of time before, you know, the end of the game, of course, too. So
And from a couple of the comments on this Kickstarter page, like other reviewers who maybe already got to preview it, there is a sense that I get that the game is very tight. So even though there are these kind of different choices you can make, it is still kind of like that limited timing feel, which uh, I think it can go bad in games, right? It can feel too restrictive, but I think in this game it comes off like it'll be a good challenge, where it's basically that kind of efficiency mixed with a bit of that push your luck, right? Like what is the process I want to go into build up the recipes I want to get the most points, but can I take this little kind of chance here of maybe just barely having enough ingredients and trying to get it done? Or will I need to sell sooner to get money faster to jump to something? So it has that tightness to it, because I think the game is also just 7 rounds. And so, and from the player boards, it looks like there might be limited number of spaces to actually store your liquors.
yeah,
So
yeah.
it's
So it's
really
like
going to
two
be tight and like
sections. Yeah.
focusing on the exact things you want to do within that time frame of the game.
And kind of going into components a little bit more too, I think one of the other nice things about this game is, as you can see here on what Ben is highlighting, one of the nice things is there are certain items or certain things that you're collecting over time, such as these caskets, or kegs for kind of aging your beers or your spirits, not beers, your spirits in general. One of the nice things about this game is that not every single thing that you use is fully consumed. So we already talked about kind of when you're skimming for creating, but even in this, right? So as you're aging with this casket, once you sell it or you take it out and you're done using it for aging, you actually get to keep it, right? So it's not something that you lose and you have to kind of find a new way or kind of go get it again or something. In this game, you just have it, right? It's once you've purchased it, once you've collected it, it is yours to keep. I believe the same thing with bottles, I believe, are a similar situation, if I remember correctly. I might be wrong on that. But it does seem like there's a lot of these kind of like upgrades or kind of equipment that you buy in the game that actually stays permanent to your setup, which I think is a nice thing because it kind of gives you that sense of progression as like as you're building up your distillery and you're building up your business. So you kind of get that sense of that future, that kind of growth of your enterprise as you're doing it. Which if you had to lose them every single time you sold them, it may not feel as good, or it might feel like, oh, I have to do it. I have to do the whole process all over again. Or at least in this way, it's like, oh, I can keep and continue kind of moving forward, which I think is a nice way of accelerating and letting the game grow as the rounds pass on, especially when you're trying to create the more intensive spirits that might be harder to make or have more restrictions to them.
Yeah, I think for the like the flavors, I think you're gonna be collecting flavors over time, and like the more you have at the by the end of the game, it'll scale, right? I don't think it's exponential, but there is some kind of increasing scale on how many points for you for getting different flavors into your liquor. And I think similarly with bottles, I don't know if it's using bottles again, but it is tracked that you had that bottle. And so if you have maybe a bigger set of different bottles or bottles from the same kind of place or same style, that could be that is a kind of bonus way of getting points too. So yeah, I think that is a good way to do it. And I think the part that I am kind of curious about is that there is the spirit points or the victory points, and there's money in the game, where then there's quite often games that, these economic kind of games and resource management games where the money is your points. And so I'm kind of curious how that feels.
So I do remember at the end of the before you play, they mentioned that money, it scales at every 5.
Oh yeah,
Five money you have is worth 1 victory point at the end of the game. So while it's not that's actually a pretty heavy conversion. A lot of games, it's actually a smaller denomination of like every 2 or every 3.
Yeah.
So this one, it kind of encourages not having as much money at the end of the game. But that also depends on certain victory conditions, because there's also secret victory. There's secret goals that each player has when you start the game, which are your own kind of like potential like extra points that you can earn at the end of the game. I think one of them includes having the most money at the end of the game. So that is an option for making, or like kind of focusing on like trying to get a lot of sales with your spirits that just net you more money than, let's say, maybe just direct spirit points, for example, right? Or something like that.
But yeah, that is a good point on the conversion rate in this game. But then, I think that adds to the point I was also saying about, I think it'll be a different feel, right, from other Euro games where it is just like straight up money is your points, right? That it's still using the money for the points. And I think I don't know, it's just that extra step, I think, in a game can add to the kind of thinkiness if you want that weight in a game, making it, again, not just like straightforward, like I can make this, I can see it gets me this much money, and that's how many points I have, right? There's these little conversions that have to happen, which I think is what makes it more complex of a game. In a good way, though, in a good way. And so, as you can see, there are these different videos if you want to check out their Kickstarter page of different people who have been able to preview it. And of course, there's the art style to the game, which I would mention is, I'm not particular to it. I mean, like, I think initially, like sometimes when I see these character portraits like here, it's okay. It's okay. But looking at like the actual like box and, the character with the background, I think it actually looks very nice for the theme. Like it has that kind of like, obviously that kind of wooden tavern, slightly old timey look to it, but I think it has that also kind of a warm look to it, where it's not just like industrial production kind of feel to a game that is with this kind of theme, and it could come off that way, you know. And so I don't know if you had any thoughts on that part of it or other
Yeah,
production
I mean,
elements.
I think it looks like a pretty, like it looks pretty. They definitely made the artwork try to be very focused on kind of thematically what all these items are and what it is. It definitely helps because there's an actual industry, so you can kind of easily and quickly kind of pull of like, okay, well, I'm using these ingredients. These are real ingredients in the world, so I can just use a picture of it and put it into my game, right? Or like even pictures of like all the objects and stuff and people. Probably some of them are probably very iconic types of people that are spirits makers and such in this industry. But I think they kind of play around with it. I think always trying to do realistic people, it's always interesting when you make them cartoony but realistic at the same time. I don't think
Mhm.
it's, as Ben said, I don't think it's bad. I don't think it's like amazing, but you know, I think it fits for the game, right? For what they
Mhm.
want. I do like that they have like a nun there or like
Yeah.
someone because like, you know, the church has been a proponent of the alcohols throughout time. So it's
Yeah,
nice
yeah.
that they have that as an option. It's particular in that way. But yeah, I would say that the components themselves, I think it's pretty clean. I was gonna say that one nice thing about the cards too, that Ben referenced a little bit earlier. It is nice that pretty much all of the ingredients and all of these items are cards because of that mechanic of the skimming of the top and the bottom. Because if you tried to do a game where it's like they have like little like tokens instead, you'd have had to completely change how you do that resource management or like how you do the skimming of your resource of the items as you're creating the spirits, which maybe would have been like a bag instead, and you have to draw two out of the
Mm.
bag, but it wouldn't have looked as nice, and then you'd need like a reference card in addition to the resource, and it would have just
Mm.
probably in my mind it feels like almost that would make the game more complicated for kind of no reason. So just
Mhm.
being like, you know what, let's just put it as cards and they stack together, and then you can put flavors in that way, and then you don't have to create like reference cards for these like tokens that you're picking up. I think that just makes it really nice and makes it clean with just using cards to do that work.
And so just kind of wanted to show one more picture from Board Game Geek of like the components, like this, at least how the market would look like set up. And I think at least, you know, at least the way the picture presents it too. But yeah, again, what you were saying with the cards and stuff, it has a very clean look. And I think even art style wise, like coloring, a bit of the graphic design, it has a very consistent feel to it throughout all these kind of components, which also is really good. You don't want to see bunch of different styles or fonts that just don't work together. Maybe our friend Melissa will say that there are things that don't work together, but at least to an initial glance from us, I would say it's clear. It's very clear and does kind of have a consistent look to it in keeping with the theme.
One small thing that I'd say is kind of funky in terms of thematic ideas here is, so as the way the market works is at the end of a round, you would take the far right column and you'd move it over into that truck symbol
Mm.
or that truck section, and then you refill the market. The only thing that I feel weird about that is like, why are the lost items being stuck on a truck and driving away? Like in my mind, I'm like, that doesn't really make sense. If you're thinking thematically, like, what does that even mean? Like, are you
Mm.
shipping these people that aren't part of this anymore to another country? Like, what does that mean? Right? It's kind of weird.
You're
That's the
getting
only thing
thrown
I'd say is
away
kind
like
of,
all the other things we have.
yeah, I mean, like, I get that you'd want to add something. It almost feels like the truck should be the one on the far left
Yeah,
where the
like
decks is
bringing
stacked
it.
on, because it's bringing it to you,
Mm,
right, to
mhm.
buy or to utilize, versus kind of like you're sticking out of this truck to take it out of here. It's like, get out of here because I didn't use you. That's the only part in my mind that's like it's a little funky, right? Like if you're being super hard, like being very particular about a theme, but otherwise, I actually really like the cleanliness of how this market board looks. It's very straightforward. I like the fact that there's actually two different markets as well. Like there's the basic market and the premium market. So the basic market is anyone can always purchase from it, and you can get up to 2 items in that space, but it's always accessible as long as the cards exist, which is very nice because these are like base cards that everyone will use. And then you have this top market where you can buy it as long as you have the money and you don't pass during your turn. They're going to be way more expensive and way more but way more useful for you, but you have to kind of time how you want to utilize it. And the other nice thing is the fact that it's like a full open board. It's not like the further down the line, you have to like pay more or it kind of changes things up. It's just as long as it's in that market, you buy it and then it shifts down. The only thing you have to pay attention to is the far right ones because those will be lost at the end of the turn. But otherwise, like it's not like you have to like, I think there's some games where you have to like put money if it's like 3 steps away or something like that. So there's no kind of lost currency in that. It's just, the market is what it is.
Okay. Yeah. That's a good point. That is kind of the, like, it kind of feels like it's keeping the part that's not the player's board and stuff. It's keeping the other things simpler, so that then the
Exactly.
decision making is with your own stuff on the player side of things, which is
especially because there's so
nice.
many things you have to pay attention to in your own player board, because it's like you need to figure out how many ingredients do I have, how much should I buy, or like what can I actually make, right? So you kind of want to focus more on like how you're making it versus like trying to figure out how do I understand this market, right? Like why does this ingredient have like extra money on it, right? Like is it a bad ingredient or because right? So I like how they kept that very simple.
Agreed. And so here's another picture of the player board side with your upgrades, your own player identity, and then someone storing rum here already, and then the different ingredients, and then the list of different spirits you can try to make. And so that's kind of how it'll all look like. These 2 sections, the market and then each person's own player board. And that is the box cover. And so with that is our Kickstarter preview of Distilled. If you found this interesting, I would definitely encourage you guys to check out their Kickstarter page, which actually has the link to their pledge manager for late backing if you weren't part of it originally when it was on Kickstarter up until a few days ago. And so and like we said, the prices, like the pledge levels and the prices, are currently listed as the same in the late backer pledge. It might change though, because obviously they're still trying to set up their pledge manager. But again, that is the place you can go to check out all the details we've been scrolling through and talking to you about here, the Kickstarter page and their late backer pledge. And if you found this video interesting, hope you'll share this with friends, family, people you play board games with. Hope you'll consider subscribing to this channel and following us on Instagram at I Got Board Game. And until next time, we'll see you then. Bye.
Hey.